Okay, so let's begin. So we're going into the time and space of a world that is way different than ours, and to actually transport you to that world, which is my gift, if at all you connect to my energies, to you connect to what I'm actually trying to communicate through energy more than just words, is where a totally different world can open up for you. The world that I really, really want to bring in front of you all, that has been hidden uh, from our eyes, from our perception, from our vision for a long time. So, as I've already spoken in the intercession, that this is not going to be any religious concept, and it would be quite different than what you've heard so far. Well, I am going to use a lot of um, story content. I'm going to use the flow of the story, and for that I've also made my notes. So I would keep referring to it so that I do not jump into one incident to the other. But what I would really, really like you to do this when you actually go through this video, is that uh, you know try to visualize your version, because this is such a vast uh, story. It has so many layers, and each layer, depending upon the person's individual journey, it has something to provide, something to give to you in the way you can receive it. And even if I would like to give you so much uh, from where, in your um, understanding, in your journey, wherever you're sitting at the point, that's exactly what you're going to get. So open yourself to what you can actually perceive and see about the story, about these characters. um, Create your own world of what this time is like. And as I many times say in the book club also, even if you've forgotten, even if at all there is a chance that you hearing this version of the story, um, you may have been in that era, you may have experienced it, like we human beings, especially for those who are really, really pulled, even if it is a young child, even if it is a teenager, even if it is a total non-believer into religious stuff. But when they're pulled into such existential questions of life, about history, well, these are the evidences that we did live in such era, in that previous time, and our DNA, our subconscious carries the memories of that time. And as time passed, things started getting transformed, changed, depending upon how we civilizations were growing, uh, devolving to certain aspect, evolving to certain aspect. But the story started to twist and change according to what was required in that specific time. And what we have heard so far before the age of Aquarius began is a very different version of Ramayan. And I'm not saying this is the only version of Ramayan, of course, because this is something that I'm giving from what I'm tapping in the moment. If I start telling the story maybe a few years in the future, I might give you a very different perspective, because then the need of the time has changed. I have also changed, so I'm also tapping and looking at the same story from a very different angle. So, well, let's begin this journey with this um, intention in our hearts, that first, let's enjoy the entire journey, because I am really thrilled to talk about it, and I don't know what all and what are the things that I'm going to be tapping into while I get into this journey. I start, looking at this era in the way I'm supposed to look at, and um, let's receive the information more than my words, and more to what is coming to you in your vision, in your visuals. So, well, that is true for you in the moment. So, with all that, we begin and transport ourselves in the time many years and centuries in the past. And this is a time on the earth which is somewhere towards the ending of golden age. So, this was a period which was like the golden period on the earth. This is a period, a times, and a timeline where we as humans, as life, were evolving in understanding, um, in learning about our existence, coexisting with many different species and beings. And I'll come to that detail very soon, and also know that I'm going to be providing a lot of different information for you to kind of visualize that time and space um, more relevantly, so that it kind of fills the gap for all of you, whichever age group you are, and whatever mindset you may have, and take the information that you relate to. The ones you don't relate with, just leave it aside, keep a comma, keep a question mark, and maybe sometime in the future you may get some validation or some information that you're looking for, and you will see more sense in it. So where we are traveling to that era where we were evolving, we were building societies and civilizations, we were learning how to farm. And how did we actually do that? Well, we know in the entire process of evolution, like we started from amoeba to the ocean animals, to plants, to animals on the land, and then ultimately coming to monkeys and humans. Now, when we were evolving like that, there were more evolved beings on other spaces, on other dimensions, and when they saw that the era has come to a place where they require an upgradation, they're changing, is where these beings came to earth, and they started teaching humans or men basically how to cook, how to farm, how to lead, how to communicate, how to use language, how to build a lot of things that we know now. Somewhere we have learned from these beings, and there is a totally different era and totally different expansion that I can go on when it comes to the matter of these beings. But well, let's say these beings in our language, in many cultures, are called deities and gods and goddesses, and one of such being was the sun god. There were many gods, the moon god and the sun god, and many different gods came and taught different ways of life, each one having their own special skill and characteristic, and their own way of handling life. And when they arrived, they created families with humans, with the developing human beings. And so those families were named after them. And there is this entire dynasty that grew and expanded and flourished into great ruling kingdom, and that was the Ikshwaku clan, Ikshwaku dynasty, named after the sun god, who taught these, this people, this group of people who belong to them, to him basically, how to live. And this dynasty, each dynasty that evolved from a certain god, they had a very specific characteristic which was coming from this divine being. So, what are the characteristics of sun? Well, he's a super dutiful person. Whatever happens, he arrives in your area at the time it is meant to arrive. Whatever happens, it is meant to provide you sunlight. It is meant to provide you with the light that you require to grow, flourish, and prosper yourself during the day period. It goes away in the time. It knows when it is the right time to leave for the moon to arrive. So it knows when to enter. It knows when to exit, and it also knows what to do during its hours of work. So very beautiful being, a very powerful being, also has the capacity to grow and has capacity to destroy. So the people who are born in this destiny also carry these characteristics, these values in their DNA, and they were called Suryavanshi, the one who came from the sun. And in that dynasty, many years after, came a prince, and his name was Dashrath. He was named something different initially, but okay, this is also a time when there were many in today's time we call it psychic or spiritual gifts, or many superpowers. Well, that would be the word that would work beautifully for everyone. Some sort of superpower. It was very normal for people to have superpower. Most people who were in who were headed from such beings had some or the other superpower, and they were meant to use this power to create a better world. So, well, he had learned a certain power where his chariot could fly into 10 different directions, like how we fly planes at that time. Obviously there were no planes, that's the era that I'm talking about. But the chariots, if you are that powerful being, they used to, well, meditation was part of their life. This is a period where connecting with self, being conscious, being aware, being wise is something that's part of life. That's something that you don't really go and learn in school. If you have the seed, there are masters and teachers who helped you to grow that, but ultimately it came with you. So he had this ability to run his chariot in 10 different directions, including it could fly. So that is where his name came. Dashrath means 10, the chariot that runs into 10 different directions. And he was a very mighty, wise king, a very awakened being. And these dynasties, for a very long time, they had people who were awakened people. So this is a time where you would find most people are awakened. The people were really aware of their inner calling, of their life's purpose, what they're meant to do. They had a lot of clarity, and they ran their life. They handled their duties with that awareness, and by being in communion with the requirement of the earth. Well, earth is also a living being, just like sun god is a living being who came and helped humans to evolve. The same way, earth is also a living being, and that's why it has a capacity to grow things. You plant a seed and it grows. Anything that can grow is a living thing, and anything that has a capacity to grow, of course, is a living thing. So, well, you know, uh, they ruled and they did the duties in alignment, in harmony with the requirement of earth, and um, how they did that. Well, there were ways and there were connections that they could build with, or that is part and parcel of their daily routine. And that's what created how they lived their life, which is like very, very normal. So this is that era. And there's one important information that I want to give you before I move into any other direction into the story in today's episode, and that is, this is also a period where on the planet, on the earth, there were many different species and many different beings apart from the godly beings and apart from the humans or men. So the men is one species, and then there are obviously godly species who came and went. Like they came, they taught, and they went. The other species was the wise, enlightened beings, who they were called Rishis, and their purpose was to bring about the cosmic energy and the universal and esoteric information to the earth. And they were the people who knew how to um, manifest things for the betterment of the earth. Like example, if you required rain, and they knew how to manifest rain through different rituals, something called as yakya, or some they would speak some of those words and things. So they had this capacity to channel different cosmic energies and frequencies, and they could communicate with different gods as well. They could tap into different information of the cosmos, and if at all. And then they had their own journeys too. Like they were here to obviously channel, but also they were here to teach and learn and evolve themselves as well. So rishi is like the different species. um, there is another species that I would talk about, which is called monkey race, or the Warner dynasty. There is this other one which is like a bears dynasty. The other ones were the reptilian race. So it is like these are the people who are the combination of uh, man, and they have the characteristics of these animals. Uh, it's like animal evolving into human. So they had these characteristics of, if a reptilian being, had typical characteristic of what snake is, and also like they have their own races and their kingdoms, and they're living and coexisting with humans. The monkey race coexisted with humans. They had their own kingdoms, they had their own rules, they had their own set of laws, and how they're going to run and grow their civilization. There was this other race that arrived on the planet, that was the demon race, or the demons, basically. Now, like how rishis had a specific role of bringing in the cosmic and esoteric information. How other civilization, um, like dynasties like Dashrath's kingdom or his empire, they had a certain role to play. The role of the demons were to you know add unconsciousness on the earth, add dark energy on the earth, And this, it's like it has always been on the earth that that there is a dark energy and there is light. And so there is always this kind of a duality. There is negative and positive. That's why we always say, um, on Dashera we say that um, it is a day where the good or the light is winning over the darkness. And that's why we celebrate Dashera, that's why we celebrate Diwali, as a symbol to winning over the darkness. So, well, they also have a role, and it's like without darkness there is no light, and without light there is no darkness. So, both coexist. And so these demons, they had a very specific role to balance too much light on the earth. So, they would make sure that if at all, they came too much light, then they would like to balance and create chaos and all of that. So there was this demon species, and they had their own kingdom, and they lived. And well, they had their own kingdom, and they lived. But um, there might be a possibility that they were called, like maybe they had a different planet, and then they were called to Earth for a specific reason. And then they, in like it was really fine place to be. And um, well, they had more opportunity to create disturbance, if at all. So the role of the demon is, at all, you allow them to do their jobs, because they came with certain skills, they came with certain superpowers too, but with superpower filled with more unconscious energy, or unconscious capacity. So what is unconscious basically? So they are less in um, communion with the light, um, with the divine, um, with the lighter aspect of the cosmos. So they are more of a denser, darker energy. So at all, if you remember the idea of Dormammu in Doctor Strange, or in Marvel, if you see those, that dark demons, and these other dark dimensions and all of that. Well, how they are predicted. Well, it's not something that has come out of fiction. Well, there is truth to it, and every mythology in the world has some or the other reference of demons. So, well, we had demons at that time too, who also had some part of the earth. They lived in a hiding. Now, while Dashrath is growing, learning about being a king, um, on the other side, many years before Dashrath, there lived a demon king who uh, thought that if at all we have a grandson, um, uh, from a certain rishi, then because the rishis were very, very powerful beings at that time. So demon and a child between a demon and a rishi would really expand their potential to rule the earth. And as I said, like demons role is to uh, take over, take charge over anything that is good, anything that is lighter, and making it more denser. And they do this role beautifully, like they know that this is my beauty, and they don't hesitate to do it at all. The same way in the other side, this is a time where this happened. Right now, if we look at ourselves, well, we are the mixture of both. We just we could switch from on our daily basis, we could switch from good to negative, positive to sad. So, well, our energies are the mixture of everything in the present time. But this time the timeline is very, very clear. There is good and there is evil, like that. There is a good person, there is light, and there is denseness or darkness. So very clear concept. So there is no not a lot of a manipulation of the world. Sometimes in today's time, in school, in colleges, in workplaces, we sometimes find it very difficult to identify whether this person is genuinely meaning are good, or has a different intention. And then only after a certain experience, or after going through a heartbreak or a lot of suffering, pain, having gone through a lot of political game, we ultimately come to realize, what their actual intentions were. So, but in this time, things are very, very clear. They dress in a manner, they speak, they laugh in a manner where it is very clear where they belong, what kind of energy they are. Also, the way these people function, they were very much in alignment with their inner calling. So, if the demon's inner calling is, spreading the heaviness in the world, and the men and the rishis, their calling would be, how to make the world a better place, how to make sure that their civilizations, their people expand, they are happier, there is more happiness on the planet. So as the job of any um, kingdom's ruler or a leader was to make sure that the people were holistically happy. Financially, they are prospering. In health, they are, they're really, really happy and well. Um, e- Emotionally, they are stable. Now, this is also a time where mind was non-existent. So there is no mind, there are no thoughts. So how do they operate? Well, it's so difficult for us to understand that there was a time on earth where mind was non-existent. Well, mind came many, many, many generations after. So these people were very much attuned. When there is no mind, you're very much in attunement with your heart's calling, in what you're with your purpose and what you're meant to do while you are on the earth. So um, this demons were plotting that, how to have a baby in our family, that is the is a combination of the rishi and demon. And that's what happened, and that's how the birth of Ravan and his brothers came to be happened. Now, what there is a beautiful combination here, um, Ravan as a character, if we understand, uh, and many of us have somewhere heard through stories that he was a very I wouldn't use the word intelligent, but he had a lot of knowledge about everything. And um, he so well he had a great much of knowledge, but at the same time, uh, because he being born in a demon family, so knowledge of the rishi and the denseness or the darkness of the demon, well, that came in the way of his actual knowledge. And so what happened to him was that, you know even after having so much knowledge, and he was already he was born powerful. Demons are typically, if you've seen, Ramayan and Mahabharat, any television series, we know that, demons are like really, really powerful and tall and huge beings, pretty muscular. So, well, they're already powerful, but somewhere he wasn't satisfied for what he had. So he was always asking for more, but he was always asking for more from a limited, lacking perspective. So, when you 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 never have enough in your life, you always find that, okay, this much strength is not enough, I would like to have more. he He wanted to have more in terms of he believed that he could only satisfy himself if he had power over everyone, and everybody were under his control. And this is a characteristic of an ego, which is a limited, dense version. Uh, we have heard obviously the word ego, super ego. So well, Ravan was he dwelled in the level of super ego. If there's anything beyond super, well, he had that, and uh, from that he always continued to ask for more power, and he wanted to rule the entire earth, all beings. He did not like the coexistence. He wanted uh, to take charge over everything. He wanted to rule over everything. He wanted control over everything. So with his knowledge, he had already uh, controlled all the planetary beings. So it all, Ravan said something, the sun and the moon and the Saturn, and all of them had to obey. He had so many superpowers, and still he was finding himself not in a place of not enough. So um, he went to his father and asked, like, I would like to have more superpowers, and I would like to be a Jay. I would like to be uh, such a being that is never being uh, nobody can win over him, or nobody can win over me. And so um, this is a time when manifestations, like, if we've heard the idea of law of attraction, or uh, the word called manifestation, well, this is a way, and at all you've read the book or you've heard any content on the YouTube, it talks about, you're constantly asking the universe to bring a certain thing in your life. And um, well, in that time, uh, when beings like them decided they want something, well, they obviously wanted to manifest it. And so one of the tools to manifest was to go and finance in the forest. So they forget everything, they go into the forest, they sit under a tree or stand under a tree. We've heard many stories in our scriptures and mythology, we've seen the visuals of it, but well, they did that. And they actually asked that specific thing they wanted to manifest for themselves, the strength, that skill, that lifestyle that they wanted for themselves. So Ravan was like, super uh, determined that I want to control everything, and nobody could win over me. So he sat in penance for years. uh, Different gods came and gave him different boon, but he was like, I want this specific boon where nobody can kill me. No powerful being in on this earth can kill me, in the universe can kill me, basically. So and this was a boon that only Lord Shiva can give, and Raman was a great um, devotee of Shiva. Now, I want to highlight a beautiful point over here. Raman was meant to bring destruction on in that era, in some or the other way. Shiva is a symbol of destruction, but the way both operate is a very different kind of a destruction. Shiva has, even in the destruction of a specific thing, Shiva has a greater intention that it will create something beautiful after that. And Ravan was doing it from the intention of wanting to control and have everything under control, nothing beyond that. So, and the beauty is that he was asking the boon from Shiva, and even though it looks on the outside that Shiva accepted his boon, and said, fine, you will be a Jaya, nobody will be able to kill you. And in all of that, he still had some sort of a deeper plan. Okay, like how um, Avengers, or if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, he always had something going on behind what is seen. While Shiva was typically, and even more than that, because his third eye is open and he can see. So what is third eye being open? Well, it's actually having a vision greater, and that encompasses every aspect of the universe. So that's Shiva. And Ravan is asking him the boon. And I'm talking more about Ravan at this point. The reason being, this is all going to come handy as we proceed in actual part of Ramayana. So, well, he sits determined and he's asking Shiva to grant his boon, which is that no animal, no deity, no gods, uh, no demons. All the people he considered were more powerful than him should come and grant him, should not be able to kill him. He didn't consider men typically as one who could actually kill him. And that's where the cosmos or the universe plays trick with him. But well, that's Ravan. So with all this power and strength and boon granted, he's back and he starts taking charge of the earth. He starts ruling different kingdoms. He took away, who took control over many kingdoms, and he started expanding his empire with the help of his 5 brothers, who were also graced by different gods. Now, as Ravan's power is increasing, the dense energies are increasing. The demons that were hiding in different places on the earth also had more strength. They're like, okay, now we are more powerful, we are more superior, and so we can do anything. And well, I'll come to that part on what happened when demons started to get powerful. But in the meanwhile, when all of this was going on, there also was a part where the gods and the men decided to fight with the demon empire, with the demon king, to keep them in control, because if at all they expanded, the life of men and their dynasties, the godly dynasties, were kind of in danger. So this is a war where Dashrath actually went and participated, and he killed many demons. He was that mighty. He was a sharp archer, and this is a time where women went in the wars with their husbands. So Dashrath is one of the wives. Her name is Kaikai, and I'll introduce you obviously to other wives as well. One of the wives, she was in the war, and she happened to save Dashrath from falling, and that made her the favorite queen, let's say, for Dashrath. And also Kaikai was granted 2 boons at that time, where she could ask from Dashrath anything that she would like. So well, that's where we are. Just give me a minute. Yeah, I am back. And so this is where Dashrath and the 2 boons of Kaikai and all of that came to be. Now we are heading to the part of this war is over, and Ravan is enjoying in in his palace in Lanka, which is created as a golden city. And Dashrath here rules for a very long time in his country, which is Ayodhya, his capital, which is Ayodhya. Now, for a very long time, and this is a time where a king must have children to run his legacy. And he didn't have sons or daughters, so he asked um, his advisor, and this is a time when rishis used to be kings there as advisor, because they had a great perception to how to have an added vision to run their kingdoms. So his advisor was Rishi Vashisht, and he suggested that let's manifest beautiful children through yagya. So through a specific ritual of yagya, which is like, creating, calling in the energy of fire god, and asking the fire god to destroy any blockages. Now, fire has a capacity to cleanse, right? So calling the fire god to cleanse any blockages that's stopping a certain manifestation to occur. And also fire is an energy of creation. Like, if you have a passion, if you have fire in your belly, is where you can create your business, you can create your passion, and you can actually go after your dreams. So fire, that's where the fire is energy of creation, and it cleanses also. So um, the yagna was performed to have beautiful children for King Dashrath. And at the end of this entire ritual, ultimately and finally, Dashrath was blessed with 4 sons. So his first wife, that was Kaushalya, the second wife, that is Kaikeyi, and third was Sumitra. He had 3 wives from different kingdoms. And Ram was born to Kaushalya, Bharat was born to Kaikeyi, and Sumitra had 2 sons, which is Lakshman and Shatrughan. Now, as these 4 little beautiful beings started to grow, the palace was filled with joy, and the kingdom was celebrating their arrival, and they were really hoping for these kings to be really beautiful, powerful leaders who would really expand and add more happiness in their lives, way more than their predecessors did. So now this is a time of the era, or this is a time of the world where there was a beautiful relationship between a leader and the community, leader and its people. So when something beautiful happened in the people's world, the king would be happy and would celebrate. When something beautiful happened in the king's world, the people would celebrate. So there was this beautiful connection. So it wasn't like, as I say, the king ruled like they were his people were like this, their children. But that's actually true. This is a time where there was a beautiful harmony between the leader and the people, and that's why, because leaders were supposed to um, direct, and the role of the leader or the Kshatriyas was to direct the civilization into a better place, and not let them get distracted, let them suffer, or let them choose a path or a mean or a way of life where they would end up choosing a life that has pain and that has suffering. Um, so well, Akbar was a great ruler, and he had made sure that his people continue to expand and prosper. The businesses prosper. They're more happier in their lifestyle. There's more celebration in their lives, and they continue to bring in more growth and different levels of learning, new information, new technology in that period. Whatever technology, whatever means were there to make their lives easier, they keep, as a leader, he continued to bring that into the world, made sure that they lived in harmony, there were less conflicts, and also knowing how to resolve their issues in a more balanced way. So, well, he was doing his part very beautifully, and the people also wanted his sons to, carry forward his ways, the name of his dynasty. Now, amongst all of that, obviously, Ram, who was the oldest one, he was the most loved of all. The reason being, uh, well, he had a specific purpose, even though every person in this story has their own purpose, but he had a specific purpose, which and that purpose encompassed all beings on the earth at that moment. You know what I mean? Like, in if it's the story of a Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, or even characters like Doctor Strange or Iron Man. You know, why are they considered heroes with superpowers? The reason being, the ultimate destiny is to look into the good of all and act accordingly. So, and it's not like they're doing it out of some sort of a force. It's very natural for them. That's where the hero is. And also, uh, his is a character that typically is going to grow exponentially his in this entire journey, in the entire storytelling. So well, um, he had this purpose, and a purpose obviously is known to us, but in this episodes also this purpose is going to be revealed as we proceed with different aspect of his life, how a different aspect of his life play around. So he was loved. The kind of characteristics that he had, his nature, the way he played, the way he looked after people, the way he cared for, you know. So, it's like, how many times we come across people who, the way they do things, we just find it very amusing. Well, he had that, a very charismatic person just from, his early ages. And well, all the four kings were growing up, and then there came a time where they had to be moved to the schools. The school in that period and that time is a totally different topic, and that's something that I would really really like to talk about in the episode 2, about the education and what happened in their school life, in the education system, and the education system of that era. So well, I would like to conclude so far the episode 1 uh, with with the last few words, and that is this entire story uh, that or in like all of these characters that we're going to be meeting, and we're going to be reintroduced to that through the story. Each of this character has a very crucial role in creating this entire epic entire saga, and each character has something to teach us. And even though we know it, well, we're going to look at it from a little deeper perspective, in a little deeper way. And well, I think that's the part that I'm going to be doing on in the episode 2. So I hope that today's information would really add something in your world. I've gone into bits and pieces. I hope that's okay with you. But as you actually start getting the picture of this time and space, I think you will have more flow. So I wanted to do that information part. I wanted to bring back certain facts into our visualization, and let's meet on Tuesday at 3 p.m. for the episode 2 about um, education system in this era. So take care. See you soon on Tuesday, 3 p.m. in episode 2 of Ramayan, a new generation perspective.